I really love Canada. They've got nice food, great landmarks. Someone once told me it was like America, except for intelligent people. They do seem to like a bit of blackface though. With my audience on side then, welcome to Toronto. It's round 13 of the season, and the last street race on the 2025 Indycar schedule. This place tends to find a way of throwing everything up in the air, last year quite literally. So how would Alex Palou and friends get on here? Well, let's find out. Roll the intro. News time then, and firstly some bad news for Tech Tips fans, as the Seagull is fully operational for this weekend, meaning poor old Linus here was literally hired just so he can be told he's worthless again. This video is really turning into a masterpiece of how to age well, isn't it? Sticking with McLaren, a news broke this week that all three of its 2025 drivers would keep their seats heading into 2026, which, considering that's a papaya press release, means about as much as a Santino Ferrucci apology. The final big story surrounded Ed Carpenter Racing, who this week unveiled plans for a brand new headquarters in Westfield, Indiana. Rumour has it that driver Christian Rasmussen was scheduled to complete a show run to advertise the move, though this was rejected on the grounds he'd probably f***ing kill someone. Anyway, with that lovely image of Christian Rasmussen in your head, let's get into practice. The big talking point from opening practice was the Toronto street course itself. Several parts of the track repaved since 2024, which meant driving around it felt a bit more like riding your mum. Christian Lundgaard was one of the first to tap that asphalt and the wall, which I wouldn't recommend. With Rasmussen causing some early scares as well, other drivers were being caught out by the Turn 8 runoff. Scott McLaughlin going long down there, only to find himself forming an IndyCar orgy with O'Ward and Ferrucci. Herta was a little slow to join the party. Actually, we could have just said Herta was a little slow. Now, it's been a while since something weird disrupted an IndyCar session. Well, actually, it's been about 7 days, but we could reset that counter as Devlin DiFrancesco was spotted out on circuit with an additional passenger. No, not Georgina. He's gone and found himself a pool noodle. With clearly nothing important happening on circuit, this quickly took over the Fox broadcast. Georgia Hannaberry attempting emergency surgery on the poor thing before we switched over to an episode of Noodle Watch, where the nation held their breath as we bore witness to this tragic suicide, though Devlin DiFrancesco can at least now understand Chip Ganassi's point of view when the team boss ran over his dog last year. That took up the rest of practice one, Carl Kirkwood ending it on top in his silver gold bull car. Honestly, that sponsor name is a bit like if I rebranded this channel to Rocket-Powered Receding Hairline. With that then, we move on to second practice, and that came with the news that IndyCar would repave overnight at turn 3, getting rid of the bump down there, though in doing so, just creating another one. That meant drivers essentially had an all-new track to learn on Saturday morning, Santino Ferrucci getting a master's degree in the geometry of the Toronto runoff early in the session, this last one causing him to rage quit and drive straight into the pits. Will Power had enjoyed a fairly quiet weekend thus far, though then decided to take the smart stop branding a little too literally. Meanwhile, Jacob Abel's team was having problems refueling on pit road. Thankfully, the driver of the 51 car had a unique solution to this, just sticking it in the wall. That brought practice to a premature end, Herta leading by a 10th from Timu Red Bull heading into qualifying. That's next. The big shock of Group 1 was Prama's Callum Ilott, who progressed alongside the RLL machines of Rahal and Foster, because we're no longer on oval, so they're allowed to be good again. Group 2 was a new session with Rasmussen in it, and once he'd sufficiently blessed the concrete walls, the more competent in the field could try to progress into the Fast 12. Below was of course among these, but bigger shocks to mount a challenge included Armstrong and Kiffin Simpson, who, come on, didn't need this violation in the form of the shock of Will Buxton in commentary.
And now Simpson.
So Simpson would be bumped out, while VK fired his Dale Coyne into second. And as we tried to process all that, round 2 was about to get underway. Only Scott Dixon didn't fancy taking part, running wide at turn 8 and later adopting the Rasmussen line, and that was all she wrote for the 9 car. This caused immense frustration for Prema driver Callum Ilott, who was riding the high of discovering there is in fact a second part of qualifying and was now ranting and raving about the quote Muppets who went into the runoff. But let's not forget which driver was unable to turn left last week. The closing minutes of that session saw VK clinging on for dear life, though he'd eventually get bumped out by Foster, whose diarrhea moment through the final corner opened the door up for teammate Rahal to in turn bump him out in the dying seconds. That left us with the Fast 6 then, and here it was widely expected to be a straight fight between the Andretti pair of Herta and Kirkwood. Marcus Armstrong wouldn't have any of that, however, as the Iowa podium finisher went to the top as the checkered flags came out. Herta then displaced the 66 car at the top of the timings before Palou slotted into second. Where was Kirkwood then? Well, fingering his own arsehole with the looks of things, the Timu Bull was 4 seconds off the pace in 6th. Race day starts with morning warm-up. That's not a session we usually cover in these videos, which means if we are, someone's decided to be a bit of an idiot. Well, we start with the Fox commentary team. Here are their picks for the race ahead. Sure hope they don't age like, well, that Linus Lundqvist video from earlier.
And I chose Santino Ferrucci because he's been awful this weekend. But seemingly the last couple of street races we've had, he's had a horrible qualifying and has absolutely romped his way through the field.
So here's Santino f***ing it into the wall. As the AJ Foyt team scrambled to repair the car and Ferrucci's hand for the race that afternoon, wet conditions in warm-up scared most of the field into the pit lane and turned coverage into more of a podcast. Speaking of which, that's a great time to plug my one, Talk Shift. Anyway, today's guest would be none other than human bowling ball Zach Brown, who delivered one of the stranger interviews I think I've seen in Indycar.
You know, that guy who's leading the championship's pretty good. If we took him out, we'd be having a great season.
The Brownmeister first called for the death of championship leader Alex Palou. Then he went on about how good all his drivers were, even mentioning Norris and Piastri, but not the Seagull because the Seagull, I guess. As the pod wrapped up, we heard news that the 14 car had been euthanized out of pity. Sadly, the ferret was still around, but now just a spectator as the command was given, and we got ready to go green in Toronto. Lap 1 had all the signs of being an absolute clusterfuck, but the whole field made it through. Herta holding the lead as Armstrong slid past Palou to take home second. Kirkwood was the next to pass his so-called championship rival, as further back, the Gallagher Chevy of Scott McLaughlin went for a suicidal move on the Seagull. Having seen this, the Penske outfit thought it may be best to put the car into some clean air, only they forgot to factor in their horrible luck this season, and within a matter of corners, the New Zealander was sporting a new tricycle look as the yellows came out on lap 3. That triggered a flurry of action down on pit road, where nothing interesting happened, so let's just move straight to the restart on lap 7. Having stayed out, Palou now led the way from VK and Foster. Herta still led the alternative strategy further back, being greeted with one of the most envious views in motorsport, Stingray Rob's prostate. By lap 13, the soft runners at the front were realising that their tyres were, well, not very good at being tyres anymore. That caused a flurry of changes as the likes of Dixon made it look like he'd switched the AI to mentally handicapped. Speaking of, Hermasmussen was on the move, slicing past 2 cars in one corner. You know what, maybe I've just judged this guy too harshly. He's been mega the last couple of races. Oh, never mind, looks like his luck's ran out. The race would restart with the same order, minus Christian here on lap 18, with more changes at the front as Little Dave moved past Foster into second, and Armstrong repassed Kirkwood. When the Timu Bullet got ahead, yeah, I've got no clue. We'd make an astounding 10 laps under green before an ECR car found itself in trouble once again, this time being Alexander Rossi, who made contact with the barrier on lap 30, though apparently this was the wall's fault. This ended up being fantastic news for McLaren's Pato O'Ward, who, due to IndyCar strategy reasons, could now cycle to the front through only having to complete one more pit stop. Alex Palou decided that he would stay out as well, provided he could just manifest some additional fuel out of make-believe land. That could be catastrophic for the championship leader, and perhaps even advantage Kirkwood. Oh, never mind, the Timu Bulls facing the wrong way in the pit lane. Now they say cautions breed cautions, though when we went back to racing on lap 37, the whole breeding concept was taken a little too literally. Jacob unable to navigate a corner and finding himself riding the Penske of Joseph Newgarden, and goat race here too because of course he is. As Newgarden posted this to his Instagram, seemingly preparing to have his rectum utterly obliterated for the second time that afternoon, we were about to go back to green. VK now leading from Simpson and Daly as Palou finally saw sense and pitted back to 16th for the restart. O'Ward was still the man in the driving seat however, putting the move immediately on Power, who tried to take said spot back and was promptly told to get to f***. Half a lap later and the 5 car was on the rostrum, then past Simpson with a move on lap 45. Oh yeah, we're only at half distance by the way. Renus VK would make things a little harder for the McLaren man, forcing the team to take their fight into the pit lane. Pato staying out 1 lap later and using the overcut to great effect as he stormed forward into effective P1. I'm sure there were other things going on at this point, but I was a tad too fixated on Goat Ray being for a very brief moment in the top 5. Our other friend of the show, David Malukas, was another to watch as we got into the closing stages of this one. Only he'd joined the ranks of assaulting his pit crew, and we're looking forward to this guy getting a free hat next week as well. Felix Rosenquist, meanwhile, was having an entertaining afternoon, picking up damage to his front wing, going straight on, almost wiping out below, then fixing his downforce issues by evening out the damage courtesy of Will Power, probably the most useful he's been all year. They were all embroiled in the Titanic scrap, with Malukas closing in behind, and subsequently making the competition look like the W Series as he carved his way through multiple cars and into 10th. Meanwhile, there was another battle brewing at the front as well. O'Ward had held a comfortable lead ahead of VK, with Simpson somehow finding his way into 3rd. That wasn't safe, however, as Herta was on the charge, and having been practically forgotten about earlier, the pole sitter was looking to salvage at least a trophy out of this one. The laps would tick down, and the Andretti got closer and closer. Then, with 3 to go, the Seagull realised he hadn't crashed yet. With no time to bring out the Reds, that was it for this one, and after a crazy afternoon of racing, we got a slightly subdued finish as the pace car took the victory over O'Ward, VK and Simpson. You know what, fair play to the man from the Cayman Islands, by the way. O'Ward celebrates his second win of 2025 then, and we all wondered, what would he chalk it down to? Amazing strategy, a bit of luck, the driving of an absolute god? No, apparently a bird on his crew member, and that was all he needed. A pretty thrilling race then as we get into the tail end of this championship. Pato now lies in second in the standings, the gap just 99 points to the 10 car below at the top of the table. That's going to take some small miracle to overcome, but it ain't over till it's over, and I'll be covering the rest of the season regardless, so drop this video a like, and make sure you're subscribed for all of that. A big thank you to the members and patrons as well. You've been starved of exclusive content recently, but you're staying loyal, and I promise that will be rewarded soon enough. Plenty still to check out on there though, so links are in the description if you're interested. I'll be back on here with the Belgian Grand Prix and coverage of the next Indycar round at Laguna Seca next weekend. Until then though, have a good one.